Hi. Welcome back to Poetry Lockdown. We're at day 274. Today, I'm going to share some of my own poetry with you. Very excited about that. Actually, my students are really inspiring me. I think I mentioned on this video series that we're in the midst of and actually finishing up a poetry unit at school. And I always make my students share their work with each other while they're in the middle of drafts, so they can kind of hear how it's hitting home with an audience. And they are great sports about it. I'm really proud of them. And I realized, I don't usually do that with the lockdown series. So I thought for fun, I would share a poem that's really in the middle of drafting. I just started it last week, and I would usually not share something out loud, but I thought, you know what, my students are doing it. I'm going to stand in solidarity with them. So there's a poem I've been working on. It's called To Robert Frost. And actually, the last poem in the series that I read, that first fall poem by Maggie Smith, she was really an inspiration to me because I really liked how, like I was saying in that video, it's kind of like we as readers are overhearing her speak to her child. And we were like really privileged with that overhearing. And I was just thinking about like, oh, that'd be interesting to write a poem where someone could overhear something that I'm saying to somebody. And for a variety of reasons, I've been thinking a lot about some of Robert Frost's poems and what they have to say about the world we live in today, especially in the United States. And so I thought it'd be fun to let you, as a reader and listener, overhear a kind of argument, dialogue, discussion I'm having with that old poet, Robert Frost. So read the poem in a second. There's one piece of kind of background context that might be useful for you to know, and it's kind of an interesting story. So Robert Frost was the poet who was selected to speak when JFK was elected president. I think that was 1960 going into 61. So I think it's like what 60 years ago now. Um, and he had been writing a poem particularly for Kennedy. And at the moment of the inauguration, when he was supposed to read the poem that he created, apparently the sun was so blindingly bright, he looked at the poem that he created and he wasn't able to see it. And so in the moment, this old great poet is kind of befuddled and not able to read the poem that he created. And so what does Frost do? He recites from memory a poem that he created probably 20 or 30 years ago, The Gift Outright. And so that's the poem that he actually read at the inauguration. So there's a reference to that in my poem to Frost. So I thought it'd be useful to have that context. All right, with that background information, I now present to you a draft of a poem to Robert Frost. To Robert Frost, December 2020. When you wrote, "Good fences make good neighbors," I wonder if you could have dreamed this America, these proud boys keeping the wall between them as they go through the streets of the capital, flashing OK, one to the other, thumb and index finger locked and the other three extended out. OK, the simple gesture, now a secret way to bind another in hate. That man in your poem, the one who would not go behind his father's saying, is that half our country now? Do we only meet to walk the line, to set the wall between us once again? I know the old story well, how 60 years ago you meant to celebrate our new emperor with a new poem, but the sun got in your eyes, and instead you read an old one from memory. You said that day we found salvation in surrender. But to whom and how? What were the terms? Who was the we? And can it be that all of us are going back on the words of our parents, our grandparents, our great grandparents, even you, poet, said? Or do the old words flash new now, like a coin in the sun? Can war not be the only metaphor? Can we carry stones for something more than building a wall or a tomb? Could they be home stones, fireplace stones, stones of a new foundation? You said yourself, something there is that doesn't love a wall. Tell us, poet, what is that something? Thank you, Robert Frost, for inspiring this poem. Thanks, Maggie Smith, for inspiring me to try to imitate you. For those of you interested, you want to hear some poetic response to the gift outright. I linked you to a really cool site that has a lot of different poets' responses to this poem, which, in my opinion, and many poets' opinions, hasn't aged incredibly well. Although it's a really important poem in the history of America and America's literary tradition. Thank you for tuning in. I hope it's a great weekend for you. Peace.